A hot topic is coming to a head in our nation's capital. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court is expected to rule on an abortion case that could disrupt access to abortions here in Texas. At the center is a 2013 Texas law. It features several restrictions on abortion, and some of those are being challenged in the Supreme Court. To help us understand the key points in this case, attorney and constitutional scholar Byron Henry joins us this morning. Thank you so much for being here with us.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you, what's at stake here? Because there are strong opinions on both sides of this case. But for those who aren't clear on what the Texas law is, tell me a little bit about what that law is and why it's so controversial.
Well, this law is the controversial House Bill 2, which was passed in the last year of Governor Perry's governorship in a special session, if you remember. It was a big deal at the time. And really the justices and the country will be focused on two specific restrictions. Those are, one, that doctors that perform abortions have to have admitting privileges at nearby hospitals. The second is that all abortion clinics or clinics at which abortions are performed have to have meet the same standards as a ambulatory surgical center, which are ratcheting up the standards that they have to meet. And the argument is that it would all but close a handful of abortion clinics in the entire state of Texas, maybe as few as 6. Some have said 8 or 9, but either way, there will only be a few open abortion clinics if these regulations are found to be constitutional. That is the argument.
So what are some of the laws that the Supreme Court justices will be looking at to try and decide this case?
Well, the Supreme Court has only tackled abortion one time in the past 25 years. 25 years ago, Justice Kennedy, who is still on the court, voted to uphold Roe versus Wade in a very narrow opinion. They've only addressed it one time since, which is in the partial birth abortion ban passed at the federal level. So all of these abortion restrictions you've seen being passed over the last decade in all of the states, the courts haven't weighed in, or at least the Supreme Court has not weighed in on those yet. So Texas is a model of the kind of laws you've seen over the past decade for the justices to tackle.
And this will really set the standard not just for Texas, but across the country, whatever the Supreme Court decides.
That's correct, because it is thought that the Supreme Court will not just rule specifically on the Texas regulations, but maybe give some more guidance and clarity to the undue burden standard that they set 25 years ago, which will allow the lower courts to apply that, whatever the Supreme Court says that standard should be, to all of the abortion restrictions that are being passed nationwide.
Now, the Supreme Court, 8 justices right now, down 1. We saw a tie vote last week on a big issue. Is there a possibility of that on this abortion issue?
Absolutely. Justice Kennedy is sort of the swing vote in these cases, and with the anti-abortion side down a conservative vote, you have 3 potential votes to uphold the Texas regulations. You have probably 4 reliable votes to strike them down, and Justice Kennedy basically will be the swing vote. If he votes with the conservatives, probably means that there will be a tie vote, and the abortion regulations will probably stay in place.
Very briefly, what are some of the possible outcomes that we're looking at here?
Well, a very narrow outcome where the court looks at each regulation and strikes some down and upholds others. A broad outcome where they rewrite the abortion standard for the entire country. Or, as you mentioned, a 4-4 tie where the Supreme Court says nothing but one sentence, that there's a 4-4 tie and the lower court is affirmed.
Interesting. Thank you so much for joining us and providing some clarity. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.